a hunch, a suspicion, that feeling in the back of your head. I'm of course talking about your spouse standing behind you, nagging you. No, of course, I'm talking about intuition. Hello, I'm your host for Perfect Fair Day, Jeremiah Evans, and today I wanted to talk about intuition with George Merchant over here. Hey, buddy.
Hello.
So, intuition is the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning.
Yep, we got to train.
Yeah.
Just keep on going. It's fine.
Wah, wah. The train threw me off, but
That's okay. Just keep going, man.
I don't know. I think intuition is an interesting thing. I guess depending on who you talk to, they might have a different definition for it. I don't know. What have you always considered intuition?
Well, people usually refer to it as their gut feeling on something. Intuition, I'm a little more precise than that because it's difficult, but to define for a lot of people, unless you experience it yourself. Firefighters, police officers usually have a fair amount of intuition. Some people in the medical field, a lot of people that are exposed to a much larger amount of decision making and having to make choices on stuff and not necessarily having all of the clear facts in front of them, where they have to make a decision on something and it's almost like guesswork, but they have a gut feeling, as you say, a gut feeling or whatever.
Yeah.
And from that arises the decision, and it feels good. It says, okay, this feels like the right choice to make. This is the choice to make, and they do. And sometimes they're split second intuitive decisions. It's almost, and for a lot of people, they're like, oh, it's psychic or this or that. It's never been that to me. I've never thought that it was a psychic ability or power or whatever. It just seems mysterious to us because the explanation of it is beyond our understanding in brain science right now. So it just seems like a pretty normal, it's scientifically recorded fact at this point. We know intuition exists. We know that the people that display good intuition make good decision makers. Most of your most successful CEOs that actually, and I'm not somebody that just inherited the job or went to some schools where they gave them the job, but ones that actually make the decisions that make their companies a fortune and things like that usually display very good intuition. So, and you'll ask them, you guys on the internet, you guys can look this up yourself with the CEOs and stuff, is that in a lot of the interviews, they'll say something like, oh, I trusted my gut. I went with my gut.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, that was like $4.5 billion acquisition or whatever. You went with your gut? Oh yeah, they still did their due diligence. You know what I mean? There's still legal things and everything. They're going to cross their T's and dot their I's, but the decision to go ahead and do it, in the first place, yeah. It was their intuition. What about you? What do you consider it?
I guess like that, but I think on a more rudimentary level, like, we use our senses and, like all of our senses in given situations, especially when it's immediate, I think, to make quick decisions. And like you said, firefighters are that, like it's like a second sense to them. I don't know, it's just weird to me because I've always like felt like, I did have like intuitions on stuff that was like strangely like, how do I know this? Like when I was a kid, like a sense of danger, like I literally saw something happen before it happened, like not, I'm not going to get too way weird with it, like, because I've always tried to like figure out why that would be, but it was something I experienced, I would imagine animals probably, people call it like instinctual, and when I was reading up on that, they're like, don't confuse instinct with like intuition. Like I feel like it probably has a lot to do with
Maybe it
the
flows.
animalistic side of us,
Maybe
like,
it flows to the same data center of the brain.
Yeah,
You know,
I
it's
think that
accesses
they're
the
probably
same
pretty
stuff.
well tied together because I mean, animals know danger well before like humans do.
Well, animals
with
just
sensors
know
we
how to
have.
do things.
Yeah, like earthquakes and
And they
they
have
have
genetic memory. They have their instinct where they know.
yeah,
You know, they automatically know how to do things. They know to fly south during part of the year. They know to swim upstream. They know where to lay their eggs. They know
Yeah.
without ever being told, without ever being communicated.
yeah,
So it's innately in them.
Yeah.
And I think what this does is, I think this actually accesses a portion, and this is pure theory. Okay, this is pure theory on my limited understanding of the brain, but I believe it accesses the portion of the subconscious mind that is basically our inherent built-in AI. Because a lot of people out there, artificial intelligence, and you think, well, it's not artificial if it's in the human mind. Well,
Yeah.
hold on a minute. Let me explain. Artificial intelligence is not really intelligence. It's just an algorithmic job, a task, okay? A very more complicated one that's very, very good at pattern recognition.
yeah. It's a branching system that
Yep.
along the way makes decision,
And
go
the-
down this path. You know,
And the more information you feed it, the more you're exposed to it. You hear about people like things become second nature to them.
yeah,
They can instinctually do things, and I've experienced this in my own life, in my own field, and everything. You begin to gain an instinct for certain things because you've been exposed to it for so long,
yeah,
and then you verify. Then you always verify, and that which makes getting something done so much faster, more efficient. You're better at your job. Well, whether that's fighting fires or troubleshooting automation or whatever it is you're talking about. So I believe that there's a portion of the brain that recognizes patterns like better than the conscious mind does.
yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
And it's running in the background and it's doing its thing, and then it speaks up ever so often and gives you a feeling because it needs to alert you, right?
Yeah.
It needs to alert you to this danger. It needs to alert you to this thing, or you're thinking really, really hard about it, and it's trying to help you. And then you think about it when your subconscious mind is doing this thing when you're in your dream state. It's always trying to solve problems.
Oh,
like
yeah.
you're dreaming and you're always trying to solve problems. You're trying to solve these problems, and sometimes they seem nonsensical to you, and they very well might be. They very well might be just nonsensical to you. But in general, your mind is always trying to solve problems. I got a question for you. In intuition, when is a person better? When is their intuition best? When they're experiencing negative emotions or when they're experiencing positive emotions?
I would say actually negative.
You would think, right? It's actually been tested out. Some really neat studies have done, and I 100% would have thought the same thing that you were, because you stress your system and you feel like, okay, like I'm gonna make better intuitive decisions or whatever because I'm under this stress and I'm gonna do what I need to do to survive. It's actually the opposite. When you are in a better state of mind, when I say better state of mind emotionally, when you are experiencing positive emotions, your intuition gets better.
Yeah,
Which I thought was amazing. I thought, well, that's sort of like the healthy mind.
Yeah.
You're not bogging it down by stressing and thinking about all these other things. It's like you're not taking up your CPU power, right? You're not taking up your cycles, going through and getting gummed up by all this stuff. Like, oh, I had an argument with a loved one or, spouse or whatever. And I really shouldn't have said that at work. And you've got all this stuff going on in your head, lots of regrets, lots of negative, reinforcing this negative emotions, everything. And guess what happens to your intuition? You just flatten it. You flatten it. And I would have thought the opposite at first, but once you look at it and it makes a little more sense.
yeah. So, and what I was looking at,
I'm not smarter than you. I wasn't trying to play
no,
that
no,
game,
no, because
I
it
just-
kind of plays into what I read too.
It was very interesting.
Oh my gosh, what is his name? Not Jung, the other psychologist guy. Oh, Freud. Freud rejected the idea of like knowledge, through any other means, but analytical, process. And Jung actually embraced kind of the intuition.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I've always felt similar to what I'm reading some of Jung. You can grasp basic knowledge, or maybe even less than basic knowledge of maybe even stuff you don't know, subconsciously.
Yeah.
Because your brain's always taking stuff in. I mean, the fact, what you see, what you hear is your brain constructing the reality in front of you, and people with certain, mental stuff like face blindness, or people that are colorblind, they perceive colors different than, what you would, It probably plays into the way that, your brain maps out reality, but yet, like you said, it's probably more of a background process, rather than the part of the brain that's actually like drawing out your reality, in front of you. But oh no, I mean
well, what I was going to say is that kind of goes to the point where I talk about intellect and intelligence and stuff like that, and it not being such a one-dimensional thing. IQ is not a good measurement. It's the best measurement we're currently using, but it's not. It really is a very rudimentary, I think, not a great measurement at overall intelligence, like the mental capabilities of a singular mind, of a particular mind. I don't think it's good for that. I do believe it's good at measuring a certain type of intelligence or brain power, if you will, because you look at different people and they actually have different mental skills, just like they have different physical skills and different skill sets and stuff. And you start to take a look at that and you go, well, some people are going to have way better intuition, right?
Yeah.
And when these people, if you think about it, if they start at a very young age, and they're as they grow older, and this intuition keeps coming into play, and they get into these different situations. They're able to kind of avoid the bad situations because they trust their intuition, and they find out, oh, that's a really bad dude. That guy just murdered somebody or whatever, and your intuition tells you, hey, go do this thing, or hey, and I did, and it turns out well, and you're kind of rewarded for that. As you get older, you're going to take more risks.
Yeah.
I think this goes more for a lot of the more entrepreneurial people and stuff, is that when you have a certain degree of intuition and then you couple that with some drive, I believe you see a lot more of the entrepreneurial type of people. You'll see more of the risk takers because they trust their intuition more, because it's worked well for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be like anything else. If I do something that works well for me, and I'm rewarded for it, I'm gonna do that thing I'm good at. So they're really just following the natural path of doing what they're good at.
Yeah.
And and they're that's gonna be reinforced. It's just gonna keep being reinforced. All the way up until they're billionaires. That's gonna be continually reinforced.
Yeah.
So the intuition for me, I had an intuition 20 years ago. That's just now. We're going to find out. We're going to find out if I'm right about this. It looks like I am. All the signs are pointing to right. But 20 years ago, me and my older brother had a conversation. I had first gotten into industrial maintenance, and it didn't take long to realize pretty quickly that there was some very, very big missing things in the industry, like just big missing things. And every place I worked at, everywhere I went, and now I've got a bunch of customers in manufacturing. It's all been reinforced. That intuitive thought has been reinforced again and again and again. And it was just specifically about the industry. It was I was like, I really think that there's a huge skills gap and problem here.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a huge need for training, right? There's going to be a very, very big need for industrial maintenance, troubleshooter, electrical training. That's going to be a huge need. And I saw it over 20 years ago, and I said, yeah, that's definitely going to be something that's going to be a growing problem. It's only going to get worse. It was intuitive then, and then all these other facts and figures along the years have just kind of come and supported that, intuition. But I was 20 something. I only worked at one place, And I was, there was like a conviction to it for both of us, for me and him.
Yeah.
And we spoke about it and we came to that conclusion separately. So it was very interesting to me because something like that, when you're like, oh yeah, in a couple of decades, it's going to be a nightmare. I knew it. I was like, it's going to be a nightmare unless some meteor comes crashing down, some really big earth-shattering, earth-moving event happened. I was like, this is going to be one of the problems for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got background information in there, you've got observation, and then that intuition kind of speaks up because I want to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to solve this problem. How do I solve this problem? Well, 20 years later, now I have my own shop, business. We have the classroom now, and we're just about ready to go now and fill this classroom. And I'm getting calls almost daily from people asking me, is it ready to go? When is it ready to go? And that demand, now that's local demand. I'm going to have to do some advertising to push it out to, the country and stuff like that. Cause I couldn't keep this thing running on just local, but my thought process is that there was a problem there that I felt needed to be solved.
Yeah.
And so for some reason, my intuitiveness, the intuition spoke up to me and said, in order to fix this, the fix is people need to know this stuff. There's got, you got to train somehow. And it's not like it gave me all the details. It's just like people need to learn. They need to know how to learn. They need to know how to do these things, or none of this, American manufacturing just won't be a thing. It won't even be able to be a thing because you won't be able to, everything breaks. And you can't, and this machinery especially breaks, it runs 24/7. It requires constant maintenance. It requires even the most modern stuff requires constant hands-on, keeping things running, PMing it, just making sure everything's okay, and then troubleshooting quickly because these businesses experience a large amount of money loss. I'm getting off on a tangent, I really shouldn't, but
Yeah.
it's really, I see this as like a huge problem. I knew it was going to be like this, just this blow to us, this death blow to our economy if we don't start coming up with solutions. And I knew it 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, yeah, my intuition spoke up. I was a young man. I didn't, I didn't have all that knowledge I have now, and it's only reinforced that.
So yeah, I guess I've always known intuition is driven by emotion. That's funny.
Yeah.
I guess I never stopped and reflected, positive or negative emotion.
Or it drives emotion.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think emotion drives intuition, maybe both ways. More so than the logical part of your mind. But here's the way I picture it. A lot of people might just fixate on this one little thing right here. This is a phone. Instead of standing back and looking at the bigger picture of something.
Yeah.
I think your big thinkers or whatever, your theoretical, scientists or whatever, they're probably more driven by intuitions because they come up with stuff nobody ever thought of,
Yeah.
And then you test it out scientifically. I don't think intuition's a bad thing. It can be very wrong,
Oh yeah.
and it can be very bad depending on, the decisions you make or whatever, or how much stock you put into a thought, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I just think, if people are oh, I have intuition, I would say maybe, sometimes just step back and try to look at the bigger picture on something, to glean, knowledge that you maybe didn't know,
Yeah.
Try to think of why a bigger picture thing, why things are that way,
Yep. I agree with you, man. I agree with you. I think that nowadays we're killing, it's like we're neutering our intuition. I think people can get it back, but I believe that we're damaging it a lot because we have our faces down in your phones.
Yeah, I just held my phone up.
That's a great example.
Talking about with anything, we just very narrowly look at, my phone's the only object I had right there that I wanted to lift up. But yeah, you're right. I do think the more we depend on technology to answer questions, I think a lot of intuitive knowledge and it's creative. I think it plays on the creative side of thinking too. Very heavily. Whereas more scientific or logical stuff doesn't really play with like creativity all that much, like,
well, there's also observed reality, objective reality that we've observed ourselves too. It's going to be very difficult to convince me of certain things, and I'm going to avoid going down the argument about certain medical procedures and stuff. But there's going to be it's going to be difficult to convince me that something is better than something else if I've seen the opposite before.
Yeah.
And my intuition is going to constantly tell me, no, you, because that's how we've survived. That's how people have survived for a long time, because we've observed these things and go, that led to death.
Yeah.
That led to not death or less death.
Exactly. Before we had, the scientific process,
exactly.
We did have that, but I'm sure.
Yes, it's definitely much more ancient than the scientific process, right?
Yeah. Although I think the scientific process was used for a long time, it just didn't have that name,
Yeah.
It wasn't as refined.
Yep. I think maybe the scientific process arises out of intuition.
Yeah.
And I believe that. I really do. I think that our intuition is, as a society, is getting, well, I shouldn't say is getting, I think that it has in the last several decades gotten worse. And I think due to technology and our dependence on it, I believe that we have shuttered off our eyes and our ears to the outside world, and our observation and all that little bit of information. It's actually a mega amount of information that gets filtered out.
Yeah.
And we don't think about it. We don't think about the cars that drive past us. We don't remember them a minute later. We're not, there's these things that are going on, but there's data there. There's the certain angle of the sun hitting off of something, and there's all this stuff that's going on, and that's getting filtered down and filtered out.
That's so funny you use that example, because that's when I do a lot of my best thinking on grander stuff, is when I'm driving, because I'll look at not just what's in front of me on the road.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I am paying enough attention that I don't get killed, but I'll like the whole sign thing, that I brought up that you never noticed, here in North Carolina, there's so many road signs that are falling over.
Yeah.
And I've just
brand new one that just went up.
Yeah.
It'll be knocked
over. I spent
over.
so much time and asked so many people why they think that is, and I really think it comes down to shoddy materials and
I think it's
possibly
the quality of the
workmanship,
material.
but it's just ridiculous.
I don't think it's the guys putting them up, because they're putting them up according to code and what they're supposed to be doing. It's like the metal's paper thin or something, because they just blow over and just fold in half.
There's always, I'll be looking up at the sky thinking about how clouds form and stuff like that. I don't know.
Well, I read an article recently that was actually very interesting about this. You can improve your intuition. You can actually improve your intuition. One of the things is to connect with people.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Connect with people, and leave time for peaceful thought. It's like when you're driving long enough, it's not stressful. If it's a peaceful drive, you're driving along and your mind is just, you're allowing yourself to be at peace. You're allowing yourself to be in quiet. You're allowing your mind to just relax and kind of do its thing and wander where it's going to wander.
That sounds so funny, because I'm sure a lot of people are like, that's the most stressful time in my life. Well, let those people pass you. Don't let it,
Yeah.
Don't feel like you got to gap them, oh, how dare they,
So, I'm a very relaxed driver. Would you disagree with me? I'm a very relaxed driver.
You're more relaxed than me.
But yeah. So, and when I'm alone in the vehicle, I'm super relaxed, because I'm not worried about anybody else then too. So, I'm very, very relaxed driver. People do stupid things, and I'm like, everybody makes mistakes. And I just don't get mad. I'm just like, okay. 99.999% of the time, I don't get upset. I'm just like, people are going to do what they're going to do. And I don't worry about it. I'm a defensive driver. I keep space between me and the vehicle in front of me. And I make my drive, I choose things to make my drive not stressful, to make it relaxing, so I'm not getting stressed out on the road. Now, that's probably a little bit easier to do, seeing as I don't live in LA or New York or New Jersey or Portland or whatever. Some of the really nasty big cities that have a a lot more stuff that, to stress you out when you're in your vehicle. But I genuinely try to make the things that I do relaxing. Like I try to turn stress, and it's been very helpful. I think the last couple of years of my life have been a big journey for me. But in order to keep my mind on the tasks that need to be done and it not bury me, I really am trying to change everything I do into more of a relaxing so if it requires pre-planning, and I know nothing ever goes according to plan, but if you have like a good plan and you got all your stuff ready to go ahead of time and you're thinking ahead on it and going, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You're taking some notes so you don't forget stuff, because that's really stressful when you forget something. And just like making steps to make things more relaxing. And what I've discovered is all of a sudden the intuition I thought that died off or whatever, it starts to come back, and you start to have some better intuition. You start thinking clearly. You are able to come up with more solutions to things. You become a very solutions oriented person.
Yeah.
Instead of being stressed out,
Well, speaking of intuiting stuff, like people have always nagged me when I put my music on, like, in a setting, because they're like, that puts me to sleep. And, it happened to me last week when I was working, with a group of people here. And, I intuited, like, I guess it depends on your mindset. Like, I'd rather, like, have something that, like, gets me in that mode because I can think about what I'm doing, But, like, I think people that don't take time to relax, like, thrive and are kind of addicted to the, not the adrenaline. What is it? What's the opposite of melatonin again?
Cortisol.
Yeah, cortisol. Like just being stressed when at work because you need to be, to. Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on what you're doing, but in the setting, A
little bit of stress is okay. A lot of stress is deadly.
I can focus and accomplish more. I feel like when I put like more relaxing music on, I don't have to have like energetic music. It almost gets, distracting to me.
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to listen to like metal or, like. Really,
And I think that's a preference thing.
Yeah.
For me, believe it or not, some of the most uplifting, relaxing music is like a much more upbeat, metal, heavier sort of thing or whatever. Not screamo rock or whatever, but something that's got some good lyrics in it and stuff like that. Like that actually like makes me feel good, and it does help me relax. But I also like very soothing music. I go to sleep to very, very soothing music with no lyrics. Piano and violin and stuff like that. I do like, that sort of ultra relaxing music, if you will. But there's things that relax my mind more than it relaxes my body. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And what I'm attempting to do when you're trying to be productive and everything like that, like if I got earbuds in and I'm on a job site, if I got earbuds in and my head in a cabinet, you guaranteed you're going to see me do a ton of work. You're going to see me accomplish a lot of stuff because my mind is completely just focused in on what I'm doing, but it's like in this relaxed state for what I'm doing flows.
Yeah.
And just doing this, and I'm not getting stressed out, and I'm not paying a price, like a negative price for doing the work, right?
Yeah.
So
I guess hyper-focus would be a little bit opposite of like intuition, but yeah, that's interesting. Like maybe we could do a whole nother thing on, I really do think, well, anything you consume like kind of maps your brain, but I do think music very directly does,
Yeah.
I think that's why I don't think it's just that, oh, that person looks like that, it's not surprising they listen to that music, and I think it's like, it helps like obviously define people, but I do think, it is like kind of a defining thing, That's not a bad thing, but
No.
But yeah, I have a hard time believing that just outright like metal music, maybe it could help somebody have the energy. Like I know when you work out, you want some more like, or like super energetic stuff. But I have a hard time believing that on a regular basis, like really out there music. You know,
Yeah, I like.
is I mean, I don't know, prove me wrong, but
It's probably
it's
like
good
a
for like
personality.
concentration or
Yeah, I
like
think
intuiting things.
I think it's also probably like maybe a difference in personality and preference in that case as to
Yeah.
what people
I'd
find
have to look at more
relaxing.
studies. I know they have the whole like exposing plants to stuff, but that's like gets into the energy of things.
Well, can you sit in complete silence with nothing for long periods of time without being without it unnerving you? Can you just sit there and complete?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So for me, I can do that as well. I can sit in complete silence. Matter of fact, I didn't realize that I did it all the time until one of our helpers was like, "How does he do that? How does he drive and never turn the radio on?"
Yeah, I don't.
For
Generally.
they're like he'll drive for 2 hours and not even turn the radio on, and I'm like, yeah. So, like complete quiet to me is relaxing. For
Yeah.
some people, it's unnerving.
Yeah.
So I mean,
That's probably if I had to guess and intuit it, it's probably people with like more like ADHD, like personalities, that like always people that are bored easily, like they have to
Possibly.
have constant stimulation. And again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm not saying I'm right. I just have a hard time believing that like somebody that listens to heavy metal when they're trying to like do something more intricate is like all that successful. I mean, there's probably people that could prove me wrong, but I don't think that
Oh, I could prove you wrong right there myself. In that instance though, because when I got my head in the cabinet and I'm doing stuff, or if I'm sitting down and programming, if I put on some like really upbeat sort of pump me up music, I do work. I am very productive. I'm extremely productive with that kind of music. There's probably a spillover there where if the music gets too harsh, it'd probably be distracting and wouldn't
I guess
be
that's
helpful or whatever. But again, that's probably because it's preference, right? It's like to me.
Do you think there's a watchmaker out there?
To me, there's like a relaxing, it's relaxing to this point, and then if you go a step beyond that, then it's like it's just too.
I mean, do you think there's
chaotic.
somebody out there that makes like fine watches, the many $1,000 watches by hand, the intricate, that's like blasting, like screamo music in their head?
Maybe. In their head. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you. Yeah. I really wouldn't. It wouldn't surprise me. I've met some super nice, like soft-spoken, really kind people that are like metalheads and stuff like that. And it's the personality and the music almost seem at odds with each other, but that's the music that they like or whatever for whatever reason.
I don't know. I guess maybe if you're exposed to it, your cortisol levels don't spike as much, or
maybe
your adrenaline, and I guess like I used to drink coffee at night, with people before I went to bed, and like that doesn't make any sense. Coffee keeps you up, but like once you do it enough, it actually makes you tired, or puts you in. You flatten out faster or whatever. I don't know. It's interesting.
I cut
things.
that out. I cut that out because I've found out that as you age, you don't recover so well from that. And you don't sleep well. You don't get good dreams and stuff.
I guess I've always like tried to balance things out, but especially as I get older, like you gotta kind of find equilibrium in a lot of things in life to really have a good mental health and just overall like. Wellness. I don't know.
Yeah, well, no, you're right.
Getting too hippy dippy. I don't think it's too crazy.
No, I don't think it's too crazy at all.
Yeah.
It's keeping that mental well-being is I think pretty important. We're talking about intuition here, and I think that most people know what intuition is, and I think some people have very, very poor intuition. I think everybody has it though.
Oh yeah.
I just think that it's like this muscle that. For some people goes like so unused that it's just this weak, thing, and then for other people it's very strong.
I was. Do you know what aphantasia is?
I've heard that word before.
It's when people can't like draw mental pictures like at all or well in their mind.
Yeah, they can't make the image in their head.
Yeah, that's hard for me to wrap my head around, but I'm not gonna say that it ain't true. I don't. I'm not in somebody else's booze. It's just. I would imagine people like that probably Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe there is people that are like that somehow have intuition because that's what would kick in. I would be interested in talking to somebody that describe themselves that way. You know?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by things of the mind because they form so much of who we are.
Yeah.
And they influence so much of who we are.
So, to jump into another thing that might not be the favorite thing of everybody, as far as that, like, I know religion a lot of times, like, like I said, a bunch of different things have like different definitions for intuition, but I mean, that's definitely a heavy thing in religion, like the idea of the Holy Spirit and being guided, like that, like it is in intuiting guidance, right? Like do the right, thing, like, I don't know. Like,
as a Christian and somebody that has actually, read the Bible and studied the Bible, quite a bit, I'm going to say I don't think that now I could be wrong, somebody can correct me in it, but I don't think that in Christianity, in the Old or the New Testament, intuition was equated with the Holy Spirit. But I think some people might interpret that that way. I imagine a lot of people would interpret that as that, though. But intuition to me seems like almost a biological thing.
Yeah,
and
but like you have prophets and stuff, and like where would you say their like inspiration comes from? Because you could say it's like an intuition of like things greater than ourselves. Right?
Maybe that's because there's a crossover in words there. I think this might be what's going on in that case.
Well, when I was reading about it, there was definitely a lot of like ties in religion. I don't think I came across Christianity, but like I didn't delve enough into it to like really be able to speak on it. But
like I was just saying, I think it's because people equate intuition with like the Holy Spirit, and I think that intuition has much more of a biological component to it, and because there's people that of faith, people that don't, people that are agnostic or atheists, stuff like that, that show a fair degree of intuition, and I don't believe that it's necessary born of religious belief or even claimed by. I mean, some probably do, and I think they might be making a mistake in doing so.
I pulled it up here. Well, keep talking. I got
okay. So,
oh, here we go.
I can keep talking. I can keep talking.
Yeah, I don't see an entry for Christianity, but like Islam, it says Islam scholars varied interpretations of intuition, often termed hadas in Arabic, hitting on the correct mark, sometimes relating to the ability to have intuitive knowledge to prophethood. Yeah, that was about all. They start talking about Plato in there. That's not, Plato I don't think was, Greek philosophy.
It's a great, but it's a great question because I think it's a.
So it has tied in religions, but that's why I was curious about Christianity.
If it looks like a duck, it might be a platypus. I think this where we might be right here is that a lot of people think that they're like, oh, okay, well, they would equate the intuition with the divine, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the case.
So you don't think maybe having more of an intuitive mind, like, would open somebody up to like be more receptive to whatever, the divine, intervention? Because people, like, you have to admit, people have been prophetic in your life or whatever,
Yeah.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just trying to understand,
your...
This is
a great conversation. No, I agree. What you're positing, that people that are more into
like open to...
their intuition is better, right? And they have several experiences, especially positive or even negative, that save them from something. Intuitive type of things, I think that they probably are more likely to lean into faith and religion and that kind of thing, okay? And claim that as the Holy Spirit, right? Claim that as the divine, okay? Mm-hmm. The divine is speaking into me through intuition. And I just... and I again, like, I could be wrong. Somebody could correct me on this or whatever, but I don't believe that intuition is the divine. I don't believe that. And the reason I don't believe that is because so many people have experienced these moments of intuition and these sort of things, and they feel mystical. They feel magical. They feel something otherworldly and outside themselves because it's outside their logical understanding in the moment to intuit, to come to that conclusion, to come to a conclusion about something without the immediate proof or evidence in front of them as to the path they should take. So to me, yes, it's got that feel to it, but it's sort of like the old saying that everybody's probably heard now is that any sufficiently advanced technology looks like witchcraft to us. It looks like magic. It's magical, right? So something that we can't...
A can opener is magical to me.
Yeah, exactly, right? So when to my dogs, every time I open a can, they're like, oh, it's magic. There's food in there. I couldn't smell it. So, I understand where people would come to that conclusion or lean into that. Those that believe in something, and those that maybe don't or are agnostic and go, well, there's something there. I can understand that point of view. I can understand where they're coming from. I can understand that. But from my faith and my experience with it, I don't believe that intuition and the divine are the same thing. And I'm not saying that the divine can't speak through intuition. I'm not.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, not so much the transitive property, like both ways or whatever, but like, I guess I'm asking more. I don't know. I mean, like, where do you think like prophetic? Like, well, I know where where it comes from, but like, why are some people like prophetic and some aren't? Like in your mind, Because would you admit that people are prophetic nowadays? I mean, I'm not saying that they're Jesus or like prophets from the Bible, although depending on the religion, like the Mormons actually have modern day prophets.
I think that it's exceedingly rare. I think that do I believe it exists? Yes. Do I believe it exists in mass? No.
No, and I'm not trying. That's not where I'm trying to get you to go.
Yeah,
I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts on.
I do believe that people can be prophetic. And I do believe, and that's because I believe some people are what you may call, what a lot of people may call spiritually sensitive. Spiritually sensitive does not mean empath. It does not. That's different. That's emotionally sensitive to others around us.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about somebody that's spiritually sensitive. Somebody that could gauge the emotions of their community, of their country, of their fellow man at a greater distance. And sense a spiritual sense of things that when they come into an area and they can feel, I can just feel the depression in the area, or they can feel the enlightened joy in the area and stuff like that. Whether the place is, because I've gone into some really neat, clean places that just felt dark,
Yeah.
And vice versa. I've gone into some very, very poor, rundown areas where you could feel like a sense of joy in the area and stuff. And when you met the people, you knew why. And can I explain these things? Can I, that to me is more of a spiritual sensitivity. That's not, because you're not looking at a person. You can't claim empath. You can't do that.
But not to be like transitive that it works both ways. Wouldn't you agree that that's maybe a similar experience to intuition, like maybe plays on the same part of our brain or whatever, like, I don't know.
Well, for me, I'm
because how could you know that without further knowledge? Because that's really is intuition, like being able to glean.
You're asking an ultimate question here. You're asking an ultimate question that I've pondered for my entire life.
Yeah.
Where does the divine meet the physical realm?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody has the ultimate answer, but it's just something interesting to ponder. I think
it is. It is,
and I think about it a lot.
I've thought about it for weeks and weeks on end. I think about it often. It's something that comes into mind often. because I'm a very logical person by
But
nature.
I do want the ultimate answer by the end of this from you.
Yeah,
So, you
okay.
know, like, just to be fair.
Yeah, so where you're trying, and that's difficult. And I think the safest thing to say is that we will never know. I don't think we'll ever know. I don't think we'll ever definitively know where the divine meets the physical, and how one is influenced by the other. Prophets. To get back to your question, prophets are a spiritual thing. Prophets can many times prophesize things they don't understand.
Yeah.
They don't get it. They don't understand it. They just know that the divine has spoken something so strongly through them they feel compelled to write it down and share it with others. Some people that claim to be prophets are probably just not right in the head.
Yeah.
And they just want to be seen as a prophet.
Yeah.
And then other people, many prophets, they hide. They're afraid, actually. Most of the real prophets, didn't end well. You know what I'm saying? So, especially going back to history, a lot of these people were considered like, pagan or satanic or even if what they were, prophetizing was, not, evil in nature or anything like that. So, that gift, that sort of thing that arises in very, very special cases, very special individuals, I think is somebody that is just gifted. They're gifted by the Creator with a spiritual sensitivity, like a spiritual, empath, if you will, and not to be confused with normal empath abilities. But I find it very, very interesting, the connection between intuition and, the divine, that sort of, hey, are they connected or are they not? I'm not going to say that, because nobody really can say, is like, can the divine influence that or whatever? But according to, my faith and what I've seen and what I've read, and I like to go by, a lot of what's there in front of me, what I know to be true. I've never seen anything that would, put the two together that way. You know what I mean? I would say that a lot of our like intuitive abilities, our intuition and stuff, like a sense of danger and whatnot. Women's intuition on a lot of things have kept them from being murdered and raped. You know what I mean? It's like they have a bad sense. They're like, I'm not going to go that way or whatever. It's stuff like that. Yeah, it's a good thing to trust that stuff, because what's happening is your unconscious mind is noticing things you don't. That you not consciously recognize out of the corner of your eye. You have a bigger field of vision than you realize. And there's things that could have gone on. Somebody could have stuck their head out, but you didn't actually see them. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. You didn't consciously see them, but something, a shadow played across the ground, whatever that may be.
I know.
But and then you have that's the thing that will keep you out of danger. That keeps people alive.
Yeah.
And then you've got positive cases of intuition where the person's like, I decided to do this, I had a good feeling about this, and it led to good things. It led to good results and stuff. So those cases exist in mass.
Yeah.
So I'm not arguing that it doesn't exist.
I guess my thing for it is, I know somehow they play in, but I don't think everybody has it. And I mean, I really hate like setting myself like separate from other people, but the fact that I've seen things vividly before they happen, not that I like perceived, or didn't see something out of the corner of my eye, I would say that there's something more, at least to the experiences I've had, and I'm sure other people have, not even a sense of deja vu, like literally, watching something on a loop, like a 5 second, 10-second loop, or even like longer than that, like having a dream that like played out, like almost exactly. I don't know. It's just an interesting thought to me. I don't know if it's like divine or scientific, I know people have like had these experiences.
Well, we're in the Matrix, I guess.
Yeah. Right. I guess if you want to get into quantum, like the entangled particles, actually ignore time, right? And our brains, are quanta,
Yeah, and
without getting too weird, it's just a thought, like.
well, what we're doing is right now we're exploring the unexplainable, right? What we're talking about now is something where we can touch on the effects of it, right? We can touch on the after effects of it. We can say, okay, we had this intuition, it was right. I can't explain it, right? I can't really explain it well. I had this thing happen where I knew it was going to happen before it did.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to like unpack there. And on top of that, how do you physically explain something that science has not even caught up to as far as understanding the structure and the mechanisms and like how our brains work? Like the science around our brains, people are really under a lot of delusion as to really just like how far we've come along in science. Yeah, we've come a long way in science. Man, we are nowhere close to what somebody would call the finish line. I mean, our understanding of brain science is extremely limited. Of course, it's massive volumes more than we knew 100 years ago, but it's still extremely limited.
Yeah.
I mean, for the longest time, doctors have been putting out, and this is, I want to make this case. Maybe we get our YouTube video taken down for this, because I'm going to go right after pharmacology here and these big, companies that are just always pushing pills on people and everything. So for the longest time, they attacked depression as a chemical imbalance in the brain. And they basically had to recently admit and come out with, after tons and tons and tons and tons of studies, that there was no evidence to back that. None. So they created all of these people on SSRIs and all these other problems that created other problems instead of dealing with the core issues. Okay? So they kept leaning on, this is a chemical imbalance, this is a chemical imbalance with no evidence to support it. And after years and years and years of study, they finally threw up their hands and said, no, depression is not caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. Now, I'm not saying that certain mental conditions aren't caused by chemical imbalances in the brain, so nobody twist my words on that. Because there are. There's bipolar conditions, there are brain injuries, TBIs, that cause structural and chemical changes in the brain.
Yeah.
You could take certain things, certain drugs, that will cause chemical changes in the brain. And you can actually eat certain things that you shouldn't probably eat that will cause chemical changes in the brain. There are definitely things you can do. But guess what? Depression isn't caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain.
No, I think it's way more than one thing in the brain, because I'm not going to sit here and toot the horn about like psychedelics or whatever, but people have been like snapped out of like crippling,
Oh yeah,
depression.
there's a lot of,
and I am not selling, stuff,
Yeah.
but like it's,
No,
if
sell
they
it.
want to, if they want to research it, that's something they need to look at. But I don't think it's as simple as fixing a chemical thing in the brain. I think, if I had to like take a guess or what that, I just think it's like opening up the brain to like, reformat the hard drive or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not like a chemical, thing or one, problem, because.
Well, you don't need to shy away from that. I don't think you need to shy away from that at all, because what works. And I think we need to get over a lot of our preconceived notions and ideas and everything like that about a lot of different things, chemistries, things like mushrooms and everything, because some sort of culture like, that wanted to get high and wanted to feel out of this world or whatever, because a bunch of hippies got around that. And so a lot of other people are just like, oh, they get an emotional reaction to it. Look, I don't give a crap. I don't believe, the guy that's sitting out in his underwear in the middle of the desert doing whatever or something like that. Well, he ain't hurting nobody, so he can do whatever he wants anyway. But if he's going to come preaching to me how it's like how mushrooms are going to solve all my problems, I'm not going to listen to him. But if they do some really good studies on it and stuff, and it's helping a lot of veterans with their PTSD, and it's like the only thing that's helping their
Yeah.
PTSD like significantly and changing their life for the better, and it's helping people snap out of these depression moods. And the data is showing enormous promise for such a safe and effective thing.
Well, the problem,
I'm like, yeah, go for it.
the problem
Yeah.
with depression, even if that is the solution, is it's still going to be work on the person's part. And,
Yep.
you know, nowadays everybody just wants a quick fix or
Yeah.
something.
Yep.
Just give me a pill so I can
yeah.
forget about it. And
Yeah, so
I think that's why all these depression medicines were like, you know, so,
yeah.
oh, just give me something so I don't have to think about it, you know. So I can
Yeah,
get through the
I've-
day.
I
And
mean-
I had crippling depression from when I was like 16 till I was about 20, you know, so
Yeah.
I've been there, you know, and I slip into it every once in a while, but over time I've been able to work through, you know, like, I mean,
But-
you do need to find a sense of purpose in that as well. Like, you can't just keep falling into that dark hole, right? You know?
See, and that's the thing is that we have to work on ourselves, and it's sort of like the way I look at it is I think there are certain things that can help aid us, like crutches, until we can get back on our feet again, right?
Yeah.
But we can't continue to we can't become dependent on the crutch.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do I think that there is a time and a place for medication in the treatment of mental disorders? Absolutely. Do I think we should be handing out? I mean, if you look at the numbers now, it's insane. It's insane. Like, was it 1 in 10 people are on antidepressants now? Something like that?
Oh, really? That low?
Yeah, I know you were expecting higher, right? I was like,
that's still pretty high. But
no. I mean, because people are like, people are like, what in the world's going on here? And so, and the effects that it does, the dead eyes, the soulless dead eyes it creates in people. It's just, oh my gosh, I could pick out people, like I could pick out Xanax eyes now, like really just from 100 feet, man. It's just, it's crazy to me. But they're alive. They're walking zombies. They're all over the place. But they're not experiencing life, and they're deadening everything so that they don't have to feel.
Yeah.
So they don't have to feel the pain of their own traumas and the things that they haven't dealt with, the things that they need to deal with, right? And I really, my heart goes out to people because I'm not judging them. I am not judging them. They looked for help. They reached out for help, which they made the first step to do, which is great. You went to the doctor, you said, how you feeling, whatever. Well, I've been really depressed and everything like that. And the doctor needs to look out for the patient's best interest, not Big Pharma's best interest. This cheap Band-Aid approach to solving problems is lazy. It's just absolutely lazy. It's like when we go into cabinets and there's jumper wires everywhere.
Yeah.
Instead of people going back and fixing the part and doing it right and stuff like that, taking 5 minutes to fix the core issue, they create a bigger mess. And in the end, you end up with a system where nothing works right.
Well, in the medical field, it's not worth it for them to fix somebody. You know?
Well, that's
It's easier to
true.
keep prescribing stuff. You know.
I try not to get into the conspiracy stuff, but that does cross my mind too. I'm like, yeah, you're just creating
I guess
permanent.
that's less
permanent
conspiracy
patients.
now. You know, when you had like that CEO that come out and just pretty much said that. You
Yeah,
know? Like,
yep. That's true. That's true. So my thought process on it is deal with the core issue. You know what I'm saying? Try to create a healthy mind, because I've seen people that were in very, very unhealthy places now become extremely healthy minds, extremely, engaged in life and plugged in life and loving and all their relationships got better. Like, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, this person was miserable before, and now they live in joy and they're happy because, and without any of the medication, people need to understand you are making yourself more miserable by painting over the problem. We've all done it.
Yeah.
We've all done it. We've all done it. Okay. We've all tried to do it one way or another, whether we try to cope by, doing something that makes us feel alive, exciting or whatever, whether we try to cope with alcohol, whether we try to cope with drugs, whether we try to cope with going to the doctor and saying, hey, give me a pill for this sort of thing. Yeah, you're trying to find your way to deal with this problem, but the thing is that you have to address the root of the problem. You have to address the trauma. You have to address why is it that you feel that way. You have to go within yourself and take a look and introspect. You want to get better intuition? You want to be really good, like that gut feeling really, really better. Get yourself in a much more positive mindset.
Yeah.
You know, be aware of life
yeah,
around you.
Being clouded by like stuff like alcohol, like I don't know. I guess the older I get, the more I realize like alcohol ain't the answer to anything. The only reason I ever did it was probably the reason a lot of people do it initially is just to
Social kind of thing?
no, well, yeah, it was more in social settings, but I did get to where I was like drinking on my own, but it was to challenge my reality. You know, I don't know. That's weird, but I know a lot of people like just want to like remove themselves from their reality and have fun for a little while. But like, you know, I think a lot of the mind-altering drugs, like that's like an interesting thing to people, you know. But I think that they should be approached more as like tools than like recreation, you know, because
Well,
if used at all, you know, like I don't know. I have a hard time.
well, in the past, we weren't able to drink as much alcohol as we can now. Alcohol percentages weren't as high. They were like, gosh, until the distilling process came along, you know, whatever, 150 years ago or something like that, whatever it was. Until the distilling process came along, beers and wines basically were like maybe 4% alcohol at most, you know,
Yeah.
usually like 3 or less. Like kids drank the stuff and everything like that. It was actually a safer drink than water in,
Yeah.
you know, most places in the world. So it's not, you know, alcohol has definitely changed in how,
I think it's I think it's funny that, you know, prohibition. I don't know.
don't
maybe
get
they
me
were-
started on
Yeah, I was
prohibition.
gonna say maybe they were right with prohibition, but alcohol is way more damaging to your body than pot. But that was the one that was demonized, and I'm not going to sit here and act like you know either one of them's that great because like if you get behind the wheel under either one of them, you're, you know,
Putting other
you are
people's
not
lives-
a good person. Yeah,
putting other
are-
people's lives at
exactly,
risk.
But
But
it's what you want to do in your free time. But I just would suggest like if you're doing anything to like get out of depression, you know, like
Yeah.
outside of, you know, well, you need to be talking to somebody, you know, if you're like severely depressed.
make yourself really happy, because what happens is the chemicals, the dopamine, the chemicals, the natural things that actually make us happy are like, they come from putting ourselves, dealing with our problems, you know,
Yeah.
struggling and succeeding.
Well, put
you know,
yourself in a more positive environment,
Yeah.
or you know, people that.
But that's what-
that
that's
have
what
your
I'm trying to
best
say.
interests in mind. I mean, if you
Yeah,
don't have
that's what I'm
anybody
trying
in
to-
your life, you know, it's in counseling or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You know?
But that's my whole point is that you work on yourself, you work on your environment, you work to make things like more positive. And what you're going to find out is that all of a sudden, like, oh wow, look, I'm mentally stronger now. I've gotten through this, and I do feel more positive, and I have a much brighter outlook on life, and you know, because that is going to be a lot harder to wrestle away from you. The longer you're doing that, the more challenges you push through and everything. That's going to be a lot harder to take away from you, no matter the situation. You know, but when it comes to like chemical dependency on this outside force, you know, like all of the antidepressants and you know, mental pharmacological, you know,
The cure
cures,
becomes worse than the
whatever.
the symptom.
The cure becomes worse than the disease.
Yeah.
It kills you in so many other ways. And I just believe that if you really, really want the cure, it just doesn't come easy. It's like rehab, you know what I mean? It's like if you break your leg and you're in a cast and you couldn't walk on it for months to a year or whatever, you're going to have to build the muscle back up in your leg again. It's going to be long and painful. It's going to be tough to do. But guess what? In the end, you're going to have your strength back. You're going to be able to do it. You'll be able to get to the other side. And you're going to feel proud of yourself. You're going to feel good about what you did. You're going to be like, hey, man, I went through that. It's no big deal. I'm tougher than I thought it was.
Yeah.
You know? And that's the same thing when it comes to people's traumas and things of that nature and everything. Because, I mean, I don't know if there's a person in my life that hasn't experienced some sort of severe trauma one way or another. And
Yeah.
I mean, I can go through every family member. I can go through just you know, everybody around me, and I'm like, man, that's life. This TV reality crap or whatever, where nobody's ever experienced anything negative. Nobody's ever, you know, come close to death. Nobody's ever, you know, faced sexual assault, rape. You know, Nobody's lost somebody close to them horrifically. Nobody's ever had to deal with a family member slowly dying through cancer or any of these. I'm like, that person doesn't exist.
Yeah, well,
I'm like, we all
maybe people are
have
drawn
trauma.
to, yeah.
You know?
I mean, happy endings in movies, and that came about after the Great Depression, you know.
Yeah,
Which is
yeah,
an escape
people-
to reality, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You
It
know,
was a good,
the
it was a good
reality that it
reality
was in.
type of escape. It was
Yeah.
super happy ending, and I'm like, no, the journey is what it's about. It's
But
about
on
finding
the-
peace within
on
the
the-
journey.
Like, I hate watching shows that are constant conflict, you know. Like,
Yeah, me too.
yeah.
I get uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, some people thrive on that, you know, like, or enjoy that, you know. I guess that's a lot of what reality TV is, you know.
Yeah.
Whether it's more playful or more, you know, like over the top, you know, like drama. It's just,
I'm gonna trust my intuition and say that we're past the hour mark now, and, that a lot of people don't want to watch a 2-hour video at a time. So, just to the audience, if you like this conversation, if you like this kind of sort of open form conversation where we talk about a lot of things to do with thinking for yourself, opening up your mind. And this isn't some sort of hippy dippy sort of way of doing it. We're trying to attack it from more of a logical approach. What we try to get into and explain we do, and what we can't, we just say, hey, we don't know. And that's a good conversation to have. If you would please like and subscribe. We're Perfect Faraday or pffday.com.
yeah.
Please share the videos. If you're watching us on Rumble, we greatly appreciate it. We really would like to grow our viewership on Rumble. I think that in the next few years, I don't think YouTube's necessarily going to die, but I do believe that YouTube has become a place where people can't really express themselves openly. People get banned and shadow banned and just can't really have a good conversation on there without fear of reprisal. And there's all kinds of just trickery going on there. And I do believe that Rumble is going to be a much better platform for that. So if you can, please follow us on Rumble and share it, rumble it, whatever the heck that's supposed to mean.
Yeah. I don't think anybody knows what the Rumble is.
Everybody's like, what does the Rumble mean? I guess it's a like button. I
It's
don't
like
know.
an upvote or something.
Upvote, whatever it is. And we really do greatly appreciate it. You take us out, Jer.
I just ask you to think for yourself and anything important, you know, if that means like stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, it might do great wonders for you. Thank you for watching.
See you next time.